All right. So over the past 18 months or so, if there's one thing we've heard from all of our past interviews is the word pivot. So we have had many, many conversations about great women pivoting their business and making these changes because they're forced to after 2020. Now that it's 2022, the next thing we're hearing is they've pivoted, but it's not quite enough. So now what? And today we're so fortunate to have a leadership coach with us who Michelle McGlade is a best-selling author, speaker, and podcast host. And her work has been featured on Microsoft, Thrive Global, Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine, and the list goes on, including a lot of stages that she shared with some great corporations. Before I introduce her, I want to say my favorite part of what I've read about Michelle is that she is on a mission to help you stop hiding your humanity and bring your magic to the world. So we are excited for today. Michelle, welcome to our show, and thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Marcy and Alison.
Well, let's start with this word of like how you bring magic. I think you mentioned something about, you've done a lot of research around people innocently or accidentally hiding and they're not letting themselves shine. And can you just tell us a little bit more about what you've uncovered?
Yeah. So this came about, speaking of like the whole 2020 thing, this came about around that time. I was on pause for my podcast, thinking about what was next, who I wanted to interview, how I wanted to make a shift in the show, if at all. And I had that little nudge. Do you ever have like that little tap on the shoulder, the little voice in your head that said, hey, Michelle, maybe you're using this podcast. I know you love it and everything, but you're using it to hide because you're doing the interviewing and you're not putting yourself out there.
That sounds a little bit like me. I feel like I do the same thing. So yes. I have a podcast and we have this program, and I feel like there's so many times I could be out there, and I've in some ways I had what I thought was great momentum, and then we had 2020 and everyone stayed at home and I kind of got cozy. It's like, you put the pajamas on and you don't really want to take them off and go outside and have to re-shine in the world.
Well, and I had been doing, I was on my second show 5 years in. I was like, it was just like one of those things that it just hit me over the head. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'd been interviewing all these amazing women, really trying to get into vulnerable, exposed types of conversations. And I felt like I was getting there, but at the same time, I was also thinking they're not being truly human. Like they're exposing their vulnerability in an orchestrated way, in a way that has been approved in whatever industry, company, role that they're playing. And I just had to kind of turn it all around on me. And I don't know why I did this, but I said, okay, let's lean into that. And I went out onto social media and just started asking people, I've got this idea. I think I might be hiding and holding pieces of myself back and orchestrating my own vulnerability too. Like, does this resonate for you? And the response was overwhelming, so much so that I literally made a commitment over the next couple of years to research this, to really talk to specifically high-performing women on how they saw themselves holding themselves back, hiding pieces of their personality, like creating personas depending on where they were. And it just grew and grew and grew, kind of like your beautiful show here, into a body of work that I hadn't planned. But what I can tell you at this point that came out of my research is that the most common ways that we hide and hold ourselves back is around our opinions, our bodies, our spirituality was really high, and of course our emotions. And I see you both nodding your head, and some people will say, well, I don't really hide, or I don't lie, or I'm not false. Like they take it to that dramatic, because there's such a range here. There's a really big range. I'm not talking about hiding a big secret per se. I'm just saying you make the choice every day to keep a piece of your true self back, to not be too much, to not make somebody else uncomfortable, maybe not to insert your full opinion for fear of, right? Well, all of that layers on day after day, year after year. And what you're doing is you're subconsciously telling yourself that you're second, you're not enough, you're fill in the blank, which so many women struggle with, to really unpack it. And so I think what I've learned after all this time, and what came up in the research too, is that 2 out of the 3 women I spoke with shared with me, I mean, these are really successful women. We're not talking about people just starting their career. We're talking about 40, 50, 60 something. They were sharing with me behind closed doors that they felt like they still had something bigger to give, like a bigger message, something more powerful nudging inside of them to come out and play, but they just can't unpack what that is for themselves. And when I realized that 2 out of 3 women are doing this, well, according to my research, that's when I really kind of started to be like, okay, I've got to spread this message, because what's really happening is we're all just hiding the fact that we're human from other humans, and it's hurting nobody but ourselves. And when we layer all that on day after day, that's why we can't seem to get that light out more brightly. This is my belief. This is my theory based on the research. And I had been feeling that way my whole life, despite stacking up the success on the outside. And I thought, what a shame. What a shame that 2 out of 3 women feel this way, even at certain stages of their life.
Michelle, I want to ask, is this a fear of judgment, like a fear of judgment from other people, or is it that we're judging ourselves and we're fearful of what we might find?
Oh, there's layers to this. And it's not just what you're holding back. Definitely it's rooted in fear. Okay. So like at the end of the day, we adopt this decision-making pattern, these choices for a very good reason. It probably happened when we were young. We got negative feedback, or we felt like we were going to be an outcast at school or something from our parents. It was for fear of. So we were doing it to keep ourselves safe, making the decision not to maybe shine as brightly or really put our full self out there. And where we do it, so it's not just, I mean, your question, fear, that's my theory, is what's underneath it all. But the decision to keep doing it, and what we're holding back and where we're doing it, and creating the personas in different places and dialing it up and dialing it down, because we do it depending on the scenario. All this somewhere along the way gets put on autopilot. Okay. We're doing it. So we're doing it without even realizing it. And it's that which creates, I think, the layers and layers of armor is what I call it, that is so difficult to see and unpack for yourself. Because have you ever thought, okay, I've got you. This is what I say. I'm like, I see you over there, that imposter, for example. That's a piece of this, right? Where we're giving ourselves a negative message, and you're like, I see you over there. And then you think you've got it kicked. And then 6 months later, it shows up in a different outfit, if you will, right? It's like, I knew how to spot you over there in that blue outfit. Now you're over here in the purple outfit, and I didn't see you coming. Yeah.
That's such a great way of looking at it, because if you actually visually, when you said there's so many layers to it, it's just like all of us, there's so many layers. And then you try so hard and somebody goes, to try and open up and be vulnerable, but it is like putting on another outfit. So there's other layers of that. So it's not like you can say, I shared this moment of vulnerability and now I'm done. Like it kind of keeps evolving.
It keeps evolving. And, this is a theory that I have about why, we have so many gurus putting out books and programs and weekend transformations, that people are investing in personal development, or, vulnerability in the workplace is a buzzword too. Imposter syndrome is a buzzword. But why is it that we have so many of these things in the personal development space or leadership development space, and people don't actually ever make the transformation? They get inspired, they get expanded, but they never literally get naked with themselves and move into the bigger shell, like the hermit crab. You've got to leave your small shell to move into the bigger shell. And that true transformation requires you to be naked with yourself and real.
I spoke with he's a best-selling cookbook author. He's had like some 40, 50 books or something that have all been bestsellers. And he wrote a memoir, and he was a little bit stuck, and his editor told him he should actually sit naked in the house And like, talk about getting naked. He's like, you don't know anything about yourself until you walk around the house naked for like days on end. So I don't think you're suggesting we all do that, although I guess it could work. But
that could be a tool I use. I don't know. That's an idea.
But how do we determine?
Turn your camera off.
Yeah. We don't really want to show up totally. We don't want to show up totally ourselves in every situation. I mean, there's certain times where we need to have, a role that we are playing, because when we're at a PTA meeting versus when we're on a board meeting, they're going to be different personas of who we are when we show up. I mean, if I showed up at a PTA meeting and tried to run it the way I would run a nonprofit, it would probably work. But if I was trying to run it like I was running a manufacturing line, it would not.
Yeah. So I get this question a lot. And here's the thing, it's where so one of the things I do with my clients is get them hypersensitive on what it is and where they're doing it, but why? Like, I mean, is there a good reason, like you're saying, like it's not appropriate for then that's not really literally what I'm talking about when I say hiding. Like hiding is when you've withheld it, where you didn't speak up because of, right? And everything we're talking about so far is the external. And it starts with being able to observe it externally, but what the real hiding, and when I talk about, the magic inside and helping your light shine brighter and that tug for something more, it has nothing to do with the external and everything that you're weaving externally to keep yourself from seeing internally.
So it makes so much sense that I have like 10 questions to ask you. So let's just say you're working with one of your women, a corporate woman, and for her to get as far as she did, she created a habit of having that armor, and that worked for her. That served her very well to get to the top. Now she's at the top and her leadership is stunted because she's not being appropriately vulnerable.
Yeah.
But she might not know what she's hiding, or she might not know where. Like, how do you get her aware of the armor she's wearing to start the work?
Right. So for the woman you just described, it's not going to be showing up in the language I've been using so far, right? So how it's going to be showing up for her is, maybe her company is saying, I think you need to take a break. Or she's already having health challenges that she's keeping a secret. Or she's feeling like she's got the financial security that, of course, our society is set up to tell us to go for, but there's no joy coming from the security that she's created. She thought the financial security would bring freedom, but there still feels like a nudge for something more freeing of herself. So those are the kinds of things that the women that are coming to me are talking about. And how I start with them is to teach them to get back into their body. So I help them cultivate a toolkit. So the toolkit, there's a lot of different tools for that, but some of the most common that your community could benefit from is just learning how to breathe. Training yourself to breathe fully into your body gets you back into the present moment. And it also is a tool that if you work it often enough, when you're in we'll say head moment, to get back into the center in the heart, you can teach yourself to just do it like in a meeting or with a client or, when you're in the boardroom. It sounds so simple, but who really cultivates that as a tool? Not many.
Yeah. And when it's not easy, because I could see like people needing the tool, like maybe she has the desire to do more, like she hears the dialogues all over, it's in the self-help aisle, it's in conversation. So she wants to, but she doesn't know how. Once she starts getting awareness, what's kind of like the beginning steps for her to getting comfortable with being more vulnerable with the right audiences?
The first step after that, once I'm helping people try out different tools, is I have them observe themselves in their daily life. So here's what I've I think is missing in a lot of that self-help, personal development, leadership development, is we skip right over the getting into the present moment. So we're living up here in our head constantly, and we're not getting connected to our body. We need a heart and mind connection to effectively take a good look at ourselves and what we're choosing. Okay. So the second part about it, Marcy, and what you're asking is I have them look at the ways and document the ways that they see themselves holding back and hiding every day.
And is that through like journaling, like just self-awareness type,
Yeah.
Toolkit for that?
Another toolkit I really love, again, I try to give, especially in interviews like this, the ones that are accessible to everybody. I love, breathing is a form of meditation, but you can do deeper breath work. You can do like guided meditation. And then I like that with journaling, directly with journaling after, because you're basically opening up a creative space for the information to come to you. But if you're running around with your head cut off every day, like most executive leaders are, you're not cultivating that. So you've got to cultivate it. And then you just need to capture. I don't have them attached to what's coming up. We don't go deep on it. We just get all the pieces out on the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So I think I'm skipping some middle of the work, because I know there's a lot more work to get to happen. But say she finally opens up, and then she has like what they call a vulnerability hangover. Like they have the vulnerable. How do you kind of help her stay on track, like encouraging her to keep doing it and that it's working, but it is an art form. It's just kind of new.
Yeah, because what happens is inevitably is it's a challenge to sit back and take a look at yourself in this way. And you're going to see things like one of my clients recently just like kind of texted me. She's like, oh my God, out of nowhere, I am angry. I am constantly angry. I didn't even know I was an angry person. Like, this is really hard to see and absorb and take in. And it's just a matter of, that's where going back to the beginning and really knowing what the toolkit that works for you. Some people are more kinesthetic, some people are more auditory. I mean, you've got to find different things that work in different scenarios. So my job is to hold the space, right? To hold the space for them so that they can, what's going to happen in that next phase that you're describing is they're going to not just have these pieces, they're going to start seeing how the pieces are interwoven and how that creates a fiber from them really seeing. That's the armor. Like that's what they're not able to see underneath. And that's when those things start coming up, right? That were hidden before.
And do you have to have a lot of people, probably taking all of Alison's questions. Do you have to have a lot of people give them feedback? Like, do you coach your clients to seek feedback, and not a formal 360, but like trying to get feedback from people that she interacts with to kind of learn more about herself?
I don't need to do that because they start showing up differently in their life. They're watching how people react to them differently. They're watching how they're leading their teams differently. They're watching how they're running their day differently. So it is true observation and true transformation, like in real time.
Mm-hmm. And then connecting back to who you were saying that how this person I fictitiously made up. Yeah. how she hears words, or there's certain things that are going on, which is kind of sounding like burnout type stuff, but like she might have secret health problems that she's not revealing, or she might be exhausted or not feeling like things are enough. So that's the type of feedback she's hearing that's, is the signal to work with you to help her figure out where vulnerability can be her strength, to help her shine and bring her magic out. So what would change?
Yeah, I did. Sorry if I talked over the last part there, but yeah, a lot of the women that I work with are classic high achievers. So they've built their world and it serves you really well. So it's not about shaming what you've done, but it's just not serving you for your next, season. And so they're feeling that angst of I'm contorting myself. I'm fitting this box at work. I'm doing this at home or with a significant other. I've seen myself pivot over and over again, and I keep hitting the same ceiling in a different way. It's very much knowing that they want this angst that is coming from inside to come out, and they just can't seem to figure out, like, the awards, the new job, the board seat, that's not going to do it, right? That's not what they're looking for anymore.
So what are they actually looking for? So they take off this armor, and the idea is to not put a new armor on, but to live exposed, right? So how does that come into play? I mean, how do you actually start to, I understand that, like the things that satisfied you before aren't really fulfilling you anymore because there's a piece that's missing. And is that sharing their wisdom? Is that writing a book? Is that learning how to expand their connections so that they can have a bigger reach?
Yeah, it's all of those things. They don't know exactly what it is. Some of my clients, some are leaving a job and starting a business. Some of them are wanting to, pivot in their career. They want a board seat. The thing that I understand very well about the type of person I work with is that to make that engine go, to make that success engine go, the working hard, the high achieving model requires you to tuck yourself away. Every emotion and every need that you have gets put in a box to make that engine work, especially for 40, 50 years. And so over time, that not only erodes and tells yourself that you go last and eroding your self-worth, ultimately what's at the core of that is you lose trust in yourself. Mm-hmm. And so what they're really looking for, Alison, to your question, is they're seeking their true self, but they don't trust themselves in here. Up here they do. They're intellectually capable and smart, and they're amazing. They've produced, right? But there's a disconnect between the heart and mind. There's not a hookup there, and it needs to be restored. And when that takes place, it was there the whole time. They know the answers. These are smart, classy, amazing women, just like both of you and your community. They know. We know everything we need. It's here. It's just unlocking it, and we keep ourselves from it. That's what I found anyway.
I'd love, so you had just recently posted, it was a couple weeks ago, an article about like what's, about trying to find more joy. And you basically, to tee this up and then ask the question is, really that people do have this desire to have more joy, more happiness, and they often want to get it from work, but not everybody does. So you work in this space to kind of bring more joy. And the question you asked, you say, for people to consider and start the path was, are you growing in authenticity and living more into your strengths? Mm-hmm. So how do you help people answer that question if they're kind of like, I think I am, like they're just so busy, they don't have time to actually think and ponder. So they just assume they are because they've been doing it for 5 years, 10 years. How do you help them answer that question?
All of the work that I do is about getting people out of their head and into their body and getting them to be with themselves, and really being adept at helping them pull the right tools at the right time. But I don't do, at the end of the day, I don't do anything. They do the work. They have the information. I help them to unlock it and put the pieces together. And the culmination of the work that I do with my clients is I have them create a model or a visual or a framework, whatever they want to call it, and teach it to me. It is the map of them. It is the map of how they brought themselves into hiding so that they can now walk themselves out of it to the true self. It's letting go of, another way to say it, it's letting go of ego, right? It's stepping out of ego. It's letting that fall away and sinking into the true power within you.
It's, in some ways, I'm visualizing a trip into the woods where you go by yourself and there's nothing else to do. Like there's no TV, there's no board meetings, there's nothing going on. You're just you in the woods, and you have to learn to discover who you are again, because everyone has defined you and you are now learning to define yourself.
Yeah. And the thing is that when you get these real high achieving type of women, especially, which is, you know, my sweet spot, they're very good at creating complexity so as not to be found out. And I see Alison, they're nodding. And so they need somebody who knows that. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've said to a client, I know that it's going to take you a long time, or it could possibly take you a long time to trust me, but I'm on to you. I'm watching you do this to yourself. You know, I know that you're making it really complex and creating a persona for me.
That's so powerful.
It's so powerful. It really
But it
is.
takes one to know one, right? I say I'm the best hider of them all.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like the person in the mirror is just the facade, right?
Yeah.
Everything is really inside, deep inside.
Yeah. But that's
Michelle,
my zone of genius. Like, I'm really great. Like, I used to have on my profile, does puzzles in record time, because literally that's what I do. Like, I take lots of information and I make sense of it quickly. And I think that's why I'm such a great power partner for these types of women who are really looking to unpack this for themselves.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Michelle McGlade, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I primarily hang out on LinkedIn. So it's not like I have, Sarah Johnson or something like for a name. It's pretty easy and searchable. So I'd love to connect there. And otherwise, Michelle@MichelleMcGlade.com.
Fantastic. Well, Alison, Nissen, and for my sister, Marcy Stoudt, we are RevelCoach, and this is RevelCoach plus Michelle McGlade. We are so glad you've been able to be here and to join us with this conversation. Feel free to follow us on YouTube and like us on Instagram, Facebook, all those good places. Find out more on RevelCoach.com. Again, we are so glad that you have been able to stop by.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me.
Thank you. So great to meet you and see you.